Yeah, that's good. That's what I should do. Come up to YouTube. See what's what. Actually, might as well keep it at this view so that nobody has to see me poking around on YouTube to get the share link, which I finally figured out how to do. And then we post it over here. So we've got some additions, as you will see in the live stream. That link now appears in the bottom left of the stream itself, once I figure out what I'm clicking on here. Yep. Sweet. So we got 2 chats right now. We got the YouTube chat, we got the Portal Mountain lobby chat, and hopefully we'll be able to notice if anybody has comments or questions. And we are carrying on with the, I guess this is the 4th video of our series so far. We are into the 3rd week. And one last thing to do to fix this thing. Okay. Damn it, I thought I had it set up differently. Maybe I didn't. Say something. So the idea, oh no, don't go to Minecraft. So the idea here is test, you say something and it shows up.
Nice.
Yep, on our stream. Which is good.
Alright.
Cool. I had it like transparent before, but I don't know whatever. Doesn't really matter. So we can see that. Le chat. And
oh, so it's going to be on the stream itself, eh?
yeah, that's kind of the point. So people can see themselves.
So you're going to continue introducing yourself, or what?
No. 125, good. Alright, yeah, we're just getting started up, warmed up. So let's, get something on the screen first, aside from us.
Well, I mean,
we're pretty. But of course. Alright, where should we start? Back to
life.
This one, I guess. Oh, I have to set up my monitor too. This is where we left off.
Yeah, and
right.
I've already added
a bunch of
things.
Added a bunch of things. So what we wanted to do was iterate out this corporate stack here.
Yeah, we never finished that off for the last
So that each department kind of is somewhat defined. And we have here a corporate stack ranging from chaos at the bottom to order up at the top. And basically for an organization to function, it needs to take care of the entire stack. And this is what's called a viable system.
Ooh.
Meaning, it's one of those terms out there in fancy academic land, meaning that it's supposed to be able to replicate itself, sustain itself, replicate itself. It has enough things taken care of that it can manage risk, it can do planning, it can have organized people, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that's what.
Hopefully, all the things you'd wanted to do in the first place.
Right.
Why does it exist?
Mm-hmm.
That justification. All right. What's worth discussing then?
We could try to pop through the different departments that we kind of fleshed out and maybe talk about each one. We can go up and down the stack, or we can get into the dashboard. I gotta set up my monitor.
Before we get, so the dashboard is a kind of a catch-all term for a meta product, which can come in many different ways. And when we say product, we really just mean a commodity, in the sense that, you know, we have this idea, right, that we are proposing or given to you as an item that is classified as an idea. What that means is that you can opt for a different idea. You can exchange one idea for another idea. That being the case, we call that a commodity, in the sense that it can be it has its own identity in one sense, but it also has a kind of a categorical identity in another sense, in where it can be substituted by another item from that same category.
Right, yeah, so we're not saying this is the be-all end-all of some kind of a product or offering, but
but just the fact that ours is a product, and the fact that the meta product in this case is like, well, given that we have these corporations, these are this is the template for the kinds of product that they are able to provide, and that kind of template is what we say is a meta product, because it's not a tangible actual thing. That comes from having tangible actual corporations, not an idea for how to build a corporation either. So that's kind of where the dashboard actually comes right back into play, in that it also is a framework for it's also kind of a regurgitation of the very idea of that facilitates the dashboard itself. So it's kind of part of that means is that it has a form that is simply just mental conjuring, for lack of a better way to say it. Just a kind of something you keep in your head, really. We call that a product as well, and so so that knowledge, which we call the model, if you will, is actually fundamentally the product, and that's what really is self-replicating.
Yeah, so you're being very concrete and very abstract kind of at the same time, while almost saying nothing at all.
Yeah.
So the product, the product, to speak of a product, that's something that Jenny and I are going to be, or have been working on and creating, something we want to share with the world. That's a very concrete type of thing that we could talk about.
Yeah.
And when we say that, we have, the way that this work has gone is, one of the products turns out to be like a software dashboard. Another product turns out to be like an index card dashboard.
Another one turns out to be just a way to think dashboard,
so
for your mental.
A wetware dashboard for your brain, basically. But this gets into like all kinds of old Buddhist ideas and stuff like that, just ways of observing how you think and how thoughts work. And the reason that this needs to be one of our core constraints is that sort of self-knowledge, that understanding of how the mind itself works, when you have a system internally that's coherent and resonant with itself like that, as in the ideas that you carry in your head are coherent with the actual structures of the mechanics of perception, then that can flow
and the body
outwards.
and the
it can
environment.
flow out into the body, into the environment, and you can do these external dashboards. You can do them properly. So
Right.
yeah, it's like a way of displaying your inner thoughts, but on paper or in software, in a coherent way.
And so this is kind of where the idea of the dashboard comes into play, because the dashboards gives us an idea of how to having a few buttons and a few levers that manipulate a kind of a bigger system. Like a good example is, of course, a car, where you have an actual dashboard that's meant to steer it and stop it and make it go.
Right.
Things you would not want to be doing manually whatsoever.
Your main interface.
Right. And so what we're saying with this kind of product is that this main interface we've sort of determined to be able to implant it in the various different ways that should work, and the core of that idea stems from if it's part of your mental structure. So if your own mental gymnastics, so to speak, have a dashboard that is coherent with being somebody who does mental gymnastics, right? Like if you sort of take that into account to begin with, you sort of start to ensure that the kind of gymnastics you're doing are appropriate for who's doing those gymnastics. And so we'd carry this idea forward into a more external expression in terms of relationships with other people, and then furthermore relationships in terms of a society. This is where kind of we're getting it back into why we're doing a corporation with product. Well, a corporation with a product is the current sort of interface with society in which you share ideas, in which you share anything at all. And so, and what is that thing that a corporation does through sharing is that they make products, they have services, right? So that's the lowdown on why it worked out the way it did.
Rubber has to hit the road.
Right. And so it becomes a product, it becomes a meta product, so to speak, an abstraction of one. And we move from there to sort of express that. So the dashboard, as we can see, is a bunch of very abstract ideas. And incidentally, the same dashboard acts as a list of types of corporations. That is to say, corporations themselves behave as a type of dashboard to itself, which navigates a much larger scale issues than a single idea or a single thought. They generally the point there is to unify activities of several individuals at the same time.
I think we have to try to make delineations though between this idea of a dashboard and what we're applying it to, like the archetype stacks, the different portions of the corporation. Although you may or we may say this is all part of the dashboard, at its core, the dashboard is like that perceptual overlay in its most generic form. And then what you go ahead and apply that to, whether it's a corporation or a personal endeavor, that's kind of separate. Right?
Yeah.
So we can make those delineations.
Right. And so part of the reason some of it is not making delineations, though, is because it is such a generic structure. It's not supposed to have it's supposed to be scale invariant. So it goes from smallest to large without really needing to be modified in any way. So that being said, the dashboard is both a concrete thing, a very abstract thing as well. And it all really depends on what we're looking at given situation.
Oh, something came through. Anna's watching. That's cute. Wow.
Yeah. So let's see.
Oh, there you go. Cool. Yeah.
So grander scale things. So now we're kind of want to move the conversation to a little bit beyond a single corporation and to a corporate climate environment. This is where
right. So that's a discussion that's been going on this week, talking about intercorporation.
Yeah, because having a corporation is great, being in a vacuum is not. So we need to do how do we contextualize this corporation with the environment at large so that it is isomorphic, and the environment, and then the corporate environment, which is basically the legal environment as well, that has to do with regulations and what corporations can and cannot do, should and shouldn't do. all of that needs
Mhm.
all of that needs to be weaved together, needs to be considered. Right now, when people think of corporations, they generally don't think about the grand idea that we're discussing here, because in standard terms, a corporation is something that maximizes shareholder value, and it does this
Right.
by pushing as many costs as it can onto the public. Um, so that's just the generic disposition that corporations have, and this, I mean, should be already obvious why this is a problem, and why we don't want more of the same. We don't want to. We don't want to shit where we eat. We don't want to shit where we sleep. And unfortunately, when all you're doing is throwing your garbage out the window, the proverbial window, as it were, you're relying on services that may or may not be there, services that have no incentive in being done because there's no money being made in terms of doing it. So I'm talking about like
Mhm.
sanitation and cleanup
Yeah,
efforts and all of that
this is
stuff.
one comment that that's come to me quite often, is that it's not that there's no work to be done, it's that there's no quote unquote profit in
Yeah.
it. There's always work to be done. Everything needs to be maintained.
And a lot of this work is basically fixing broken shit because we neglected it.
Mhm.
So all that said, this isn't the kind of corporation we want to bring to light. The reason the only reason there's a connection really is due to legal legalistic aspects in terms of interfacing with the world at large.
Mhm.
If we posit ourselves as something that is completely unrecognizable, we are basically looking at a non-starter. Even
Right.
if this were to all still remain as an ideology and no more than these videos, even then, like we at least setting ourselves up in some sense to reflect something that can happen, rather than just sit in a situation where
Yeah.
where we can mull about this all day long and never ever have a clue as to whether this is possible or not. So
It's been a long process.
yeah. So we don't want to be in that boat, and we want to connect with the world at large in some real sense. Don't have to necessarily start a corporation or anything to do that, but we can certainly make something relevant.
Yeah, you have to interface with the culture, where you have to start where you're at, right?
Mhm.
This is our society. People understand and respect what a corporation is, or what a company is.
It's generally something that is, ironically, that is a trust factor, a vector.
Mhm. Yeah, because you're registered with the state. This is in lieu of a web of trust, of a
Exactly.
peer-to-peer type trust systems,
Yeah.
which we want to move towards.
People have what's called brand loyalty. People have, yeah.
Yeah, just being able to sign a contract with a corporation. Like if we're doing consulting for somebody, that's what they want. They don't want to pay some guy by the name of this from who knows where.
Exactly. So it's like that professionalism barrier that is imposed on our society, and basically so again, this is all to navigate this complicated, convoluted landscape, and not necessarily do more of the same, but at the very least, not look like a completely something out of
Something
the Twilight.
alien.
Yeah,
Yeah.
alien out of the Twilight Zone that makes no sense. Because that only raises suspicion,
Mhm.
which is a layer that is just unavoidable. But
So-
the less of it there is, the better.
Do we want to go through this stack and maybe just reintroduce the corporate stack as we have it?
I don't think there's any value in doing the corporate stack. outside
Just
of this.
because we added a bunch of things like
Yeah.
what is value proposition.
So what I've done is I've filled out a little bit more of which each department looks like. Some things are just structure only still, but no content. Value proposition and risk management were filled in recently.
Mm-hmm. And those are at the bottom of the stack.
Yeah, so they're like management of uncertainty.
So where can we go with
and
this?
entropy.
Like we have this whole stack. We have some of it. Most of it is somewhat defined a little bit.
Service and production. Okay, I did record this. Awesome.
Yeah. Do you want to get into anything here, or because you know where I want to go? I want to sprint to the dashboard and start using cards. But
So before cards,
whatever we have to do before that.
cards, it's going to be two things. It's going to be education and consultant. And the reason being is because those are the mental implants, rather than the physical heuristics. They can work in tandem, though.
Mm-hmm.
They can work in tandem, but the reason you want consultancy first is because the product there is actually, I mentioned this, it's called, what was it?
Value proposition, or
Corporate value, no, the corporate value framework, or something to that nature. Basically a framework for setting corporate values.
right.
And the reason you would want to do that, first of all, it's already something that companies are trying to do, but they're not using any kind of holistic system, so to speak. They're just sort of grabbing the emotional, marketed sound bites out of it, which is fair. I mean, this is the plateau we're working through.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to take that idea and actually give it a real foundation, and this foundation is that this model is that foundation, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
that being the case, we want to sort of inject the
So if I take those and we can basically copy it here, right?
Yeah.
Copy what's here. So dashboard, are we calling this personal, or what is this conversation? Is this personal or what?
so this would be software.
Oh, is it? Can we normalize it with this corporate and institution types? What type is this? Software type.
Yeah.
Software type. All right, and then we will go and extend this. Okay, so we got corporate types. Corporate type.
I'm not sure if it works exactly like that, but
Consulting, software, and tooling. That sounds weird-ish.
yeah, I know. That's why I'm not too keen on doing this right now.
Right? Well,
It's just an idea at the moment. The point there is to create provisions, right? So one is on a concrete level, another is on
data
a
center.
software and tooling is like a broadcast, right? Like you generate these tools, people use what they need.
Right.
So it's the same idea
Yep.
as a bonfire, the same idea as broadcast.
Institute type.
So I don't think this belongs in this division, basically.
Right. Okay, but the way you were describing it, it seemed like this is a dashboard related.
So, that's kind of where I was saying a whole bunch of nothing with it, because the dashboard is both a piece of software in one sense. It's a piece of software in mentally,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also like the way the corporate landscape is laid out, right? Like you navigate the corporate landscape through this dashboard of, okay, these activities, these activities, these activities, these activities. Like they are the overlay, right? The corporation is the overlay of activity in general of the guild, and then to sort of understand how this activity is moving about, you use the dashboard idea and say, okay, well, these companies, they are doing the personal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
These are doing the relational stuff. These are doing the pragmatic stuff. These are doing the intellectual stuff.
Right.
So that's where the idea of consulting, software and tooling, B2B, and data centers is coming from. Does that make sense?
Right.
And the institutional stuff
Yeah,
is...
so they're taking care of like dashboard archetypes. that we've
Yeah,
already-
and the institution is another layer above that where it's not like the concrete activity, which the corporation does, but rather the abstract activity that allows it to happen. So basically, the social activity behind that. So the society at large. So we're talking about general knowledge, which is education, which is very personal. Socialization, which is like the fundamental interrelationship and relational sort of. I'm not sure if it should be switched then. See, this is the kind of stuff I wasn't sure about yet.
Mhm.
Might need some. Might need some massage in here.
That's
But
fine.
library is a counterpart to data center in that it's the sum bonum of all the recorded knowledge and what it means. So it's kind of like so it's not just a store space, it's also like what you do with it too, what it means. Right? So when you read something, when you're picking something out, it tells you this is for fixing cars
Mhm.
versus cooking steak. You know?
Yeah.
So it shapes that
It
information.
has to be matched with context.
Yeah, so it shapes. So a library not only has the content, it shapes the content. So that's sort of the rough schema we're going for in terms of what product is, what dashboard is, and all the different layers to which this applies and why.
Hmm.
So having the corporate dashboard, so to speak, and then
So is this this software type? Can we extend it to a card type?
yep.
So, and isn't that, like, I was thinking, isn't that basically the same thing here? Like, how is
Yep.
that really different?
It's not.
Software,
It's always going to take this.
card type.
You're always going to have the same shape to the dashboard, and that's not
Right.
that is not an accident.
And then, but isn't this basically personal too? Like, isn't this the closest to you that you get with the dashboard?
The
Is this
closest
type
you
of
get
thing.
with the dashboard is you inside your head.
Yeah.
So that would be Portal Mountain. That's the product there. The product of Portal Mountain would be to install is the installation of the same dashboard. Mentally.
Right. Okay, so we can add mental type.
Of course.
Mental type here, and basically, so software. What do we mean then? It doesn't need to be
Yeah,
software.
Software and paper.
Um,
So basically from the inside out. So
like
however
card type. Like, to me, card would be like one of the most generic ways of calling it what we're doing.
card.
You're having a commodified external mediation
Yeah.
of pieces,
Yeah, sure. Tablets.
right?
Stone tablets or whatever.
Yeah, and then we're taking these pieces and extending them out into what happens when we try to do things together in a corporate
Yeah.
struct, like multiple people working together. So common shared commitments, organization.
Yeah, so that's
Um,
sort of like where the software dashboard idea came from. Is from that level, and then went past that, of course, into how the corporate landscape should be looked at. Also, is also itself happens to be a dashboard.
Right. So I don't know how we can extend into corp and institutional already without even understanding.
We don't need to do that. We're not going to focus on that
Oops.
right now. Quick.
Yeah.
Those things need development, so we'll do that when the time comes.
Right.
But it's good to mention them. It's
Mhm.
good to see that they're there, to just understand what dashboard, where this whole dashboard thing is actually headed, and what actually is meant by a meta product, because it's not an easy thing to explain.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the meta product is really extending the mental this mental type out into various externalized contexts. But it's essentially the same thing. You need that mental. You can't use the dashboard product properly without the mental type, without Portal Mountain.
Right. That's the other area. They're kind of. They all train you in the same way, so to speak. So if you speak one, you speak the other, and so if you learn one, you're learning the other, in subtle ways. So there's really no way to get away from having that heuristic working. So the whole exercise is essentially an exercise in meditation, if you will, mindfulness, being mindful. Woo words, I know, not very corporate of me, but this is sort of an exploratory meeting, and
Mindful has worked its way in there.
Well, the word did.
In the context of
the
get
word.
back to work and stop worrying about shit.
Yeah, like it's just a way to stop people from complaining. That definitely would make it in, and we know why. All of us collectively know exactly why that happened. And if you don't,
Productivity.
anyway, sorry.
I was getting a flashback from Metalocalypse. Something about like Squizgar being like, "We cares about yous." What he was saying.
Yeah, there it is. Good times.
Yep.
Yeah. So, now that we have all these wonderful corporations networked together, blah, 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 how do we keep it all from going the same route that it always has gone, time and time again in the history of man and women? English sucks. Don't blame me.
Nobody's blaming.
No, don't
And
blame.
so, by all of these corporations, what do you mean? Like,
I mean, like,
what's
so,
gonna spawn from?
So yeah, look, so we have these corporate types, right? Imagine we somehow, by some miracle, there are a bunch of corporations that are working through this model, from this model. What does it look like for them to navigate the current corporate environment with the ideals brought in by this model?
Right. So I see there's going to be a membrane, sort of. You can be inside the membrane, and this is kind of like the cooperative space of these corporations bound by model. And then the membrane is going to be interfacing with
Legal.
external.
Yeah, and that's
state.
where you get the legal, where the legalese matters. So that's where we don't want to.
And it will matter within too, I think.
Of course,
Mhm.
There's going to be it's going to try to peer inside.
It's the fiat structure too. Like, you make an agreement, that's fiat, right?
Yeah, but my point there being is that we want to ensure that the surface looks proper. There's already a lot of rocket boats out there, and this shouldn't be another one.
Yeah, like anything within this structure will still be subject to the laws of the land, right?
Yeah.
So you still need to take care of audit and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So the idea is not to like hide something sinister behind something, but the membrane is necessary because we're reestablishing the actual holarchy. If we recall holarchy, can you bring that up actually?
Which
Just the
which
holarchy.
one?
The
Probably.
environment organism. Should have it, shouldn't
I don't know. I don't know if it's already up. Oh, just like the 4.
it? Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have
Awesome.
it. So it's. I know where it is though.
Yeah, well,
I know where it
definitely
is.
pull that up because it's relevant.
It's gonna be here. Like one of these, but I'm sure we have a better one. Something like
Shelter,
that.
there you
There
go.
we go.
So there you go. Environment, organism, neural OS, social OS is the holarchy. Right. So my bad. Not the holarchy, the concerns. The natural concerns, which are right beside the holarchy.
Right. Good.
They're isomorphic to one another. They talk about what's the job of, or what do we do with. So in the environment, we create a shelter. The organism sustains itself. The neural OS maintains that organism, that shelter, and the sustenance activity that's required to do so. And of course, the social OS that runs on top of that is to take the organism into the context of other organisms like itself, or different but similar. It all varies, but the idea always remains the same. So this is the stacks.
And this reflects triad protocol, which you could get more technical about what each part means in terms of a holon itself.
Yeah.
Generic holon.
Yeah. So we're not really into that discussion right now. What I want to draw attention to is actually that shelter bit, which is part of the natural concerns. The natural concerns being a way of being the activities of the organism within its environment, right? So once we get to that point, we see that shelter, and if you recall, we're talking about a membrane with the corporation legalese. So those two ideas are actually very much isomorphic to each other. We are literally reestablishing this model within the new corporate landscape by doing that function. So that's where.
And this is sort of so shelter to me, that's saying that, and in the context of this membrane and like having a bunch of potentially isomorphic or holonic corporations, the shelter to me is saying you're having this model and you're having a bunch of archetypes coming up and how they're interacting that must be taken care of, and you have these kind of generic constraints or pieces of the puzzle that have to be present in order for this the inner part of this membrane to be functioning as the guild.
Right. So this actually gets it right into sustenance and maintenance of it. Sustenance being the necessary materialistic need intake from the world at large that this would need to sustain itself. So basically, if you imagine an organism eating food or breathing or any kind of interaction in which it ventures out into the environment to obtain something, that would be sustenance. And the corporation is essentially the corporate network, if you will, is responsible for venturing out into the world at large, interfacing with it through its legal membrane shelter, and obtaining those things to sustain itself. The activity itself is what maintenance is called, and the community is, of course, if you are looking at a whole bunch of corporations working together, that's the community that we're talking about. So all of these things flow right at the same time. They're not things that you can take care of one thing here, one thing there, or the other thing at another time. No, the natural concerns are set up in such a way that they always present. It's a minimal set of concerns for a reason, because the idea is to go for the lowest common denominator here.
Right. This gets into the viable system thing again.
Yeah.
Where you're having a structure that we don't want it to decay.
So we're not interested in necessarily like the nitty-gritty detail of what shelter looks like here and there, but we are saying shelter has to be a part of this. So that's the natural concerns. There's shelter, there's sustenance. With those four, the cycle keeps going: more shelter, more sustenance, more maintenance activities, more community activities, and so on and so forth. That's like the end all of all the activities to begin with. Everything on top of that can be considered part of that, for lack of a better categorization. We don't really, it's just that we're not concerned with it, for the sake of the discussion. Not that we're denying that people do things.
Keeping it simple.
Yeah. So this creates that shelter. Now, this gets us right into the institution territory about these corporations. So we now getting into a sort of a unifying elements to them that would constrain them. That's the key there, that it's a constraining mechanism for that constrains them in such a way that they are not interfering with each other. So basically, it's sort of I hate the word synergy, but there it is. It's kind of like it synergizes their activities, and sort of, not sort of, but it manages them in such a way that they are cooperative. So that's one of its tasks, is to sort of bridge all these different corporations together. The second necessary function of this institution is to bind the activities of corporations, not in terms of where they can make their bucks, specifically, not based on, not, the activity should not be directly correlated with where money can be made. And so that's a very important point. This leads us to the statement that the institution, of which people are members, and the members of the institution are a much more looser definition. It's people who hold the model within their heads properly. So that's like that's sort of the minimal requirement for.
We didn't get into the institution at all yet.
No, this is
you and I haven't even talked about it.
That's what I'm trying to get into right now. So the institution covers, like,
it was related
covers
off of this
covers
chart,
yeah.
right?
No.
Didn't you say we're combining three of these, the inner, middle, and outer?
Yes, but
As
we have
one.
an entire spreadsheet to go off of here.
For institution?
Yes.
Where is that? Is it just the spreadsheet that we had up?
No, it's another one.
Oh, there's a different one. Okay, where is that?
You should see a link in the room. Chat room.
A link in the chat.
Yeah, just check the links.
Link. Supply and demand.
Demand and supply.
You screwed it up. All right. Oh, this is
No.
off the wiki. Okay, right.
I did not. Keep going down.
Sheet, demand and supply.
Guild institution.
Oh, this one.
Yep.
Okay.
So starting off very similar. So the institution is the governing body, if you will, and a lot of it is similar to the corporation, but in reverse. What do I mean by that? Where the corporation is interested in executing and fulfilling some sort of task, the institution is tasked with figuring out what needs and has to be done. And so what it's basically doing is it's constraining the potential activities of the corporate layer, the corporate network, to activities that
Right.
are guided by the institution.
So this whole thing is practically filling in for the profit motive itself. Instead of saying, "Okay, guys, we need to make money," we're removing that layer of mediation and saying, "Okay, why? What do you need it for? What is it that's actually a need rather than this abstraction?"
Yeah, and this is where we get into initiatives and fulfillment. So the initiative is what is basically the kind of project an institute would manage. It would say and it's guided by the model, right? Its entire mode of operation is essentially to realize what the field manual lays out in guild dynamics. Did I say that right?
I don't know. Honestly, I was gapping out. I was watching the stream.
Yeah, it's what the field layer manual lays out in terms of areas of concern. which is guild dynamics, right? So
Yes.
if you're going
That
through
would
the
make
entire
sense.
natural guild stack, so you're going through that educational level, the institution will basically say, okay, well, based on this education, this is the initiative we need to take place. One of them is to create a facility for decimating this kind of education, for instance.
Disseminating?
Disseminating, sorry.
Decimating.
We'll chalk it up to me being an immigrant or something.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen this at all. Yet,
No,
this
but
chart.
this has been this has been around for at least a week now.
Hmm?
So what I've done there is I've basically taken the same sort of approach that we did to the corporation and treated it as such. But once the departments were figured out, they were given slightly different meaning. So for instance, like we will see that our ministry and cabinet, for instance, are relegated to people who are members and masters. What does that mean? Well, it means that the entire membership of the institution is involved in terms of its activities. Now, I want to be clear that this isn't conceived as a democracy. Let's just get that out of the way. We're not conceiving a democracy. What we're conceiving is we're conceiving actual people who are already members. By members, I mean they understand what Portal Mountain is, basically. Let's just let's use that as the
Sure.
minimal criteria. It has more specifics to that than just that. There's domains of progress involved. There is the entire field manual to understand at least somewhat.
Mhm.
And
And another thing to throw
happen.
in there is that this is kind of a take it or leave it type thing. You can
Yeah.
use this model if you want to run an organization,
Yeah,
or
this-
you don't have to. It's
Yeah.
like,
So
decide
this is definitely
your position.
so these are people who have buy-in. They've bought into this. They are interested in this institution. In fact, they are behaving as though they are a unified force.
Mhm.
And so with that in mind, that's what forms the entire ministry. And they're not governed by a democracy because we're not interested in satisfying whims. What we're interested in is moving forward with expressing the areas of concern. And so the entire point of them is to facilitate initiatives that would move the areas of concern from hyperstition into reality. Let's just say it that way.
Mhm.
So that's what their task is to move the hyperstition aspects of the field manual into a realized, actualized narrative that is running with real human beings.
Mhm.
So sort of what we've done with creating the Telegram group. We're trying to facilitate what we imagine in some sort of tangible way, and this is just one example of doing that. Very rudimentary. We're obviously not going to discuss it in terms of what the most rudimentary things you can do. We want to actually tackle what it looks like at 100%. If it was to work, so that's just kind of how I see it.
That's all part of the hyperstition, the whole vision.
Yeah, you need the hyperstition will not work as a blurry thing. You need the whole thing to get some blurry things out.
Yep.
Anyway. So that's that, and so we can now move into seeing how the institution is related back into these.
So what do we have here? I haven't even looked at this
Yeah.
chart. We have a
So
section
what do you
off to the.
see?
I'm seeing a section to the left, one to the right. On the left here, I mean the position and facilities. That these are kind of odd arrangements of everything, but
No, think about it. Look, it should make sense.
sovereign grandmaster. I would equate those kind of. But
Yep.
So. But then I don't know why there's a step up here for position and facility.
Well, right now it says the Grandmaster does not have his own facilities. right?
Okay.
The cabinet,
Position, and then so we've missed there should be a label here, right? Shouldn't there?
this is the archetypes, but it's okay. We don't. That's not the only thing. That's not the main concern here.
It would look more normal to me, but
It's fine.
anyways. Yeah, so this is
The original
are-
archetype stack.
this is the state archetype stack.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is, word for word, except these two switched.
Right.
I then apply the position of who would actually be in the position of sovereign, who is going to be in the position of being in the
Right.
cabinet.
Yeah.
So that's where those labels came from, and so you'll see that member and master and grandmaster are at the top, not any kind of corporate entity. And then you see the departments are actually filled out by people who are holding corporate positions.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and so the top three here, this is really taking up the beyond the horizon. You could say the horizon is right here.
Yeah.
Between the I guess the shared and what's below. So these are really
So this is where the initiatives.
emergent,
Yeah.
as a very top high level emergent thing, emergent beyond a horizon. That it's not like you can say in a machine language what's going on here.
Right. This is where the initiatives are actually coming from. What the idea here is that members will express these initiatives in various ways, and the masters and grandmasters are tasked to. The masters would be tasked with rendering reframing requests in these semi-initiatives or quasi-initiatives into something that is isomorphic with the model. And so this is kind of how and so that is actually a process of back and forth where we put forward the problem, and then somebody gets back to you with, okay, well, what about this, what about that, what about this one and the other thing. And there's a back and forth going on, trying to hash out how to frame the request in such a way that makes sense for the whole. So what this means is that we're not talking about the popularity contest. So so this is why it's not a democracy. But at the same time, we are not.
A corporation isn't a democracy.
No, it's not. But neither is
It never was.
But this institution is not either.
Right.
But this is kind of like the social counterpart to the whole thing.
Right. And we're not expecting a singularity, a single point of
governance,
control of top down, a
No.
concentration point. We're
No.
seeing a completely dispersed and spread it out, and this is what it looks like to have social type of organization structure in terms of a completely flattened hierarchy.
Yeah, so the role of masters is to really groom all of these things into proper initiatives, and the role of grandmasters would then be to connect all of these different initiatives together, make sure that they are not dysmorphic with each other.
That nothing's missing too.
Right, and to recontextualize them right back from the origin of the request. So going back to the original people that had brought it to the table, and making sure that the solutions that are being worked on are
Right.
actually in sync and what's necessary. Now, what all this is going to do is it's going to make what has to happen a rather impersonal decision overall, but at the same time very personal in the same sense, because everybody is already a member and has the buy-in in the model and is simply trying to progress through it, as it's called, the domains of progress, which is the mental counterpart to making this heuristic work together very well. Since this is already the case for them, then they are almost by definition would want to ensure that their masters are taking their ideas and putting them into the kind of context that would allow the full thing to move forward together.
Yeah, that's part of good governance, is getting that feedback and the buy-in, obviously, from everybody.
So clearly the role of the Grand Master here is not any kind of control of the whole, or to sort of have a final say in something, which still happens, obviously, because they are in that position of like contextualizing and making sure that
at a
everything's
level
together.
of that kind of skill, you could say the word control, but you don't have to say manipulation or anything like that. Like,
yeah.
When you see good control, you love it.
Yeah,
it looks good.
What the ideally of what should be happening is that you would want them to do this sort of stuff, because they are basically taking and something and improving it in a way that you are not yet able to. And this is sort of a learning experience in and of itself, a guiding experience in that sense, into how the inner model works, and this is a reinforcement of the detachment model that we touched upon in the previous conversation. What it's doing is it's actually reversing the narrative of vilification of detachment. It requires it. It puts that into the spotlight of the hero rather than the villain, and it doesn't vilify the attachments, but rather instead works through them to place them in a proper context. Okay,
Yeah. That reminds me of political corruption, just as being a general problem.
Yeah,
that people put their own personal gains.
Yeah, and so there's no gains in this position. The job is actually very hard. It's very disconnected from any kind of personal thought, because the entire thing is about making sure that the guild dynamics, the field manual, is actually being applied. That's the job.
Mm-hmm.
The masters are there to ensure that the requests are, flushed out in those terms to begin with, and for the members, because they're not necessarily all masters themselves. And of course this means that's committed to some kind of work, and other tasks are going to be talked about and realize that they're not going to be isomorphic or have no let's say they don't have any kind of direct harm, but there's no resources to accomplish them. So all of these kinds of priorities are not going to be related to who said what, but rather their entire relationship to the isomorphism, to the field manual. So this spreadsheet is about how that all happens.
Right. Back to the spreadsheet.
So one thing you've noticed is that I've placed positions in the different departments, and then I went ahead and defined which
Right.
natural guild
So
they have to have as a requirement.
These are generic positions that we've kind of fleshed out as part of Portal Mountain.
Yes.
We have the degrees of coherence up at the top, but only 3 of them. These are the membership coherence, so membership and above.
Mm-hmm.
And then below that, so president, though, that's interesting because this is a sovereign position in a corporation, right?
Yeah.
Heading up departments, president, and then we get back into director, architect. So director, okay, president, director. The director, this was the board of directors.
Yeah.
So president, director. So again, we're doing another triad here. It looks like, so president, director. Next would be officer, right? Normally, if it was a triad.
It would be in the corporation, but in this case, we're talking about who's responsible for welfare, right?
Right.
So the main criteria for choosing these labels were not the triads. They were to fulfill the department. So,
which position do I have that is most applicable to taking care of welfare? Well, the architect, in the sense that it's the creative sort of counterpart to the engineer, right?
Hmm.
Like the imaginative part. So if
Right.
there's a
More
problem,
abstract.
if there's a problem, we'll architect this solution. If there's this is how we do welfare. We ensure it. We preempt it. So that's
Mhm.
all what the architect's job is for. The engineer, on the other hand, takes all the feedback and makes it meaningful. So it's really a double team. It's a team effort, right? The engineers give feedback to give that feedback to the
Mhm.
architect to work with.
And we do, like, I'm just having flashbacks to the creation of the stacks and like feedback, leadership, all that. It would be nice to go through every single slot and think, okay, how did this actually come to be? What
Yeah.
are the heuristics behind it?
That's actually what Paul. That's the homework I gave Paulo there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's what he's doing right now.
Right.
He's done a good job, by the way.
I know you approved. I had some other comments, but I didn't really know what you guys were up to.
Yeah. You're in the clear.
But yeah, the descriptions sound conventional, but then again, so this is something that's just been kind of like chewing at the back of my mind for like a while, I guess you could say, is just actually going into every slot and almost doing a tiny, like a one paragraph write-up
Yeah.
of how did this come to be and what does it mean in different contexts.
Yeah. All right. So we'll do that later. But moving on, we see leadership is taken by the executive slot. So the executives tend to head the leadership departments.
Right.
Audits are filled with researchers. Zoning are filled with builders.
Okay, so yeah, so we've skipped. So architect and engineer, these are mastery roles, correct?
Grandmasters.
Okay. And then
All 4 of these are grandmasters.
yeah, so I need to pull up that other. I
You
would
do that.
like
I'll be right back.
to pull up the other chart.
No, it's in the images.
Here we go. Okay, so Grandmaster level, architect, engineer, executive director, and we are seeing those here. Executive director, okay, that's these next 4, these 4 right here.
So yeah,
We
as
have
you-
our chart.
yeah. So as you can see, the main.
So these 4 here are Grandmaster level.
Yeah. So these roles, these positions that we were talking about, are actually a matter of coherence and not necessarily anything to do with corporations or anything to do with that. Even executives and directors, despite the fact that executives and directors are themselves are actual corporate
Mhm.
archetypes slots.
Right.
So, all that being said, is that these are more model related in terms of coherence, and they're still masters, and they're still members, and they're still grandmasters, as you can see. And also the latter 4 positions
So
are
interesting.
actually from memberships.
We skipped over master.
Yeah, master. We skipped over master because they actually come up in different places. Not in this position scheme.
Right.
For example, these masters at the generic masters at the level of governance are also teachers, mentors, counselors. They're just not heading a corporation; they're heading another institution like an academy.
Right.
And this is where you get the facilities. Actually, what the facilities is for. So the academy is like an institution that is filled with teachers, mentors, counselors, and guides, right?
Mm-hmm. It's like the teachers' teachers.
Yeah. And then you have the campus, which is just the generic social structure, right? People who are members are in the campus. That's from Coherence itself.
Right.
All of this is all very much interdependent. Okay, so, and then we have members being the researchers, builder, operator, navigator, and they're taking care of the very fundamental things like auditing, zoning, basically what we're building where, standardization order. And then this is
Interesting.
all.
So the way this is laid out, it seems like the top kind of you associate this more with social governance or whatever, like
Mhm.
cabinet ministry and all that.
Yeah.
We're saying that part of society needs to be staffed by extremely skilled and coherent people. And then when we look down at the different corporations that are coming together into the ecosystem, we're saying that those need to be headed by extremely skilled and coherent people, right?
Yeah, and also what you'll notice now is that they are actually crisscrossing each other. So for instance, if you're the infrastructure department in this is filled with directors from many different corporations, right? The welfare department is filled with architects from many
Right.
different corporations.
Right. And so this is getting in, yeah, right, the crisscrossing thing.
And now this department is responsible for making sure that this department is coherent, despite the fact that there's many
Right.
corporations involved.
And so this is how corporates are not siloed and
Exactly.
just being it on themselves, but they actually have peers. Depending on where you are in your corporation, you have peers in every other corporation. And
Basically,
this is the
that's
kind of
so.
one-
So yeah, so that depart. So this is key right there. You don't form those corporations without this counterpart to them.
Be right back.
Otherwise, we're going to get exactly what we have. Hi, Anna. Are you still watching? My 2-year-old daughter is watching the stream apparently, which is heartwarming. I hope she understood everything. We have returns.
Now, that's a very interesting point that you have these cross-sectional slices between corporations, and this reminds me of one thing that's come up when I'm thinking of how is the guild going to move forward in the corporate world, in the world as it is.
Yeah.
And so not only along what we've described here, along those lines, like you could say this is the infrastructure guild, the welfare guild, the feedback guild, and people who are interested in that get together, and you kind of cross-sectionalize the slices between corporations.
Mhm.
But you'll have all kinds of other what we call conventional guilds. So like project management guild, that's there, like that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. But like mechanics guild, cooking guild.
So this is actually another view of that. Instead of saying that they're guilds, we're saying they're institute, but really, as we said in the previous discussion when we brought up the other chart with the guild dynamics on it, right? Every corporation is a guild, every institution is a guild,
Right.
every department is a guild, you know, like every office is a guild, every member is a guild. So
Mhm.
so that really does apply. It is a guild in that sense,
Right.
and this is what gives them conventionality, I guess.
And this whole thing, it allows, it opens up a space for this entirely different paradigm where you are seeing other people as sort of self aspects or elements are of self. Fruit fly.
Yeah.
Just toss it then. Anyways, so other people, you're seeing them as part of yourself. So you don't have to think in competitive terms all the time, but
In fact, if you notice,
within this
competition.
membrane, there's that
This isn't
cooperation.
This isn't a competitive environment whatsoever. You're not. There is competition here. Let me. I'll state that much.
Well, the best ideas go forward only.
There's a competition in the in you know, applying, bidding for tasks. You know, like shit needs done. You can compete in terms of like, I want to do this. No, I want to do this. Okay, well, let's. But the idea is to take that competition and turn it into a cooperative venture, regardless. As competition tends to actually have a destructive side to it as well. So that is not an interest of ours.
Right. So this whole we're envisioning this whole sort of guild overlay
Mhm.
that you can slap on top of any context and start moving any organization of people towards more harmony,
Mhm.
towards using this type of cooperative systems where in the current climate it doesn't seem possible.
Right, and this is what the role of the whole consultancy company corporation comes from. It's from a hyperstitious point, assuming that we already have this beautiful institution and it works all, you know, it's all gelling quite exactly as we envisioned it, all the good stuff. This consultancy is to say, hey, do you want to set up your company goal through this framework, right? And sell them on the appeal of what it means for them, of course, because we're not. But what we're doing is actually we're gaining members into the institution by doing this, right?
Mhm.
So that's where that comes from, and
Yeah.
it's not a professor. What do you call this word? Where you walk around trying to gain.
Proselytizing.
Yeah, it is and it isn't that. It certainly is an invitation. It doesn't really carry any kind of condemnation, except from the fact that if you realize what we're talking about and you sort of like don't want to take it on. Not to toot our own horns here, but it's like it sounds like, well, it looks like you're just giving up on a good idea. So from that perspective, I guess
Well,
you could be offended.
This is
if
part of
you
the
want.
membrane of the way that I see it, is to interfacing with essentially guests and participants.
Yeah.
It's you need to make something. In other words, we need to commodify our product. So what from within the system needs to be commodified, whatever is to be offered,
Mhm.
so that it looks good, and that you can say, okay, it gives this benefit, this benefit, this benefit. Like your whatever, like say your project management departments will love it, your this departments will love it, because they'll be more fluidly exchanging ideas and people,
Yeah.
and even interfacing with the knowledge domains, those knowledge domains
I think I was
throughout
just
the world.
I think I was
globally.
just talking about it from like a more of a marketing perspective of like, where you tackle the lizard brain, and if it's like, and basically in marketing, you engage in manipulation, right? So you make them feel bad for not engaging in whatever product you want to do. So there is a bit of that going on in that sense.
this
Or there could be.
from our perspective, like this is a good product, right? So there is that aspect to it, but I wouldn't really look at it, take that too far. In that we do believe in this in that from that perspective, but it's not it's definitely a buy-in kind of thing. It's yeah, and it's not the only thing that you can buy into that can move along this direction, I would say. It's just one variant that we think will work really well.
Yeah, because it's better than the others.
It's yes. The long and short of it, yes. It is actually better.
So what do we have up here? Mediation requirements?
So this is like the restatement of all the different positions. And this lines them up as which natural guild?
So we've taken this stack
Yeah.
and then spread it out horizontally.
That's exactly what's going on.
Okay. And then under each we have what do we
The
have?
actual qualifications. So to be a member, right, you have to at least go through the Education Guild and the Immunity Guild, which is our focus, right? Hygiene, nutrition, fitness, rest.
Classic focus.
Yeah, once you got that, this is membership. So membership is a really low bar, so to speak.
There's something more to
low,
it
low,
because
low,
that,
low bar in terms of
that can easily be mechanical.
this is mechanical. It's mechanical and personal at the same time. What is immunity? Immunity is
Okay,
is
hold on.
proper
Let me
focus.
rephrase that. If you're doing the areas of focus or whatever properly,
Mm-hmm.
and you see the value of it, there is a paradigm shift that happens. Remember the,
Yeah,
the
no-
cosmological
Yeah,
shift?
yeah,
You're
yeah, no.
reorienting your whole being.
Yeah,
towards
membership
something.
membership has a very, very specific definition in terms of degrees of not degrees, domains of progress. Didn't cover that here. I'm not going to cover that
And
here.
degrees of what is a degree of coherence?
Yeah, it is a degree of coherence. You get there through a very specific. There is a qualification process. It's not completely arbitrary.
Right. Yeah, and in our system, like it, that's why I'm saying like it's a big thing. We equate it with like Christianity, being born again, that kind of stuff. Like your cosmos is completely reshifted to your whole identity, your self-identity.
Mm-hmm.
But re-anchored.
All that said, the natural guild that is more fundamental to the have a requirement is to cover the immunity part. So once your domains of progress are sufficient progressed sufficiently through it, right, and you've captured focus properly, you can be considered a member.
Could be considered.
It's we'll get into membership later.
Yeah.
Same shit is happening with mastery.
Yeah, I've never heard it, like we've never discussed it so like loosely, like oh sure you're a member.
No, I know exactly what the criteria is. So I will have to speak through it again.
Right.
It's been
like
at least
it's a big
year.
thing, and it has nothing to do with any particular system. It's a reorientation of the mind to the body, and that can't be described in it.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I have a more tangible criteria in mind to use for this.
You mean like what we're talking about right here?
Domains of progress is a specific there's a specific heuristic to it. So we'll discuss that. I guess we'll need to discuss
Okay.
that as a matter of.
Fine. No, it's a great topic though, and I would say that the limits of what we can do is that this is ultimately a self-identified label.
It has to be.
You cannot say, "Oh, you look like a member." You don't know.
Members
You can't know.
Members identify other members, but it's not a matter of labeling each other. It's a matter of. It's a matter of seeing it. It's a reflective sort of
Or
quality.
not seeing
or not saying
constraints
certain
being
thing.
broken.
Yes, or yeah, it all
That's the
depends.
weird part.
It's a heuristic again. Like it's not a label the label is. The
It's
label is
almost
to have
like-
something tangible to talk about, but it's not a label in and of itself.
It's almost like you stop doing certain things, certain
Yeah.
behaviors, and in that way you can't say that it is a doing of something.
Right, but also like your responses to responses change in a different way. So it's not just stopping; it's other things. Anyway,
Yeah.
long story short, there is
Mhm.
there is a critical point at which we can discern a membership, right? That critical point for this discussion is the progression through and under and the domains of progress through the immunity guild itself. Having established the immunity guild membership, you are a member of the guild as a whole. Masters are those who have progressed through the domains through another bout of domains of progress and to another cosmological sort of shift.
Mhm. I see you've gone left on the chart here, and that's very significant or different than to the right of the chart, it seems.
Yeah, they're very.
It's almost
different.
like dimensionally different.
Yeah, masters are determined through their domains of progress alone. Still, right? They act as teachers, mentors, counselors, and guides. So this is where you get a lot of the educational sort of individuals where a lot of the quote unquote information is coming from.
Right. And that's a mark of mastery is the resonance from within yourself to the environment.
To the other, yeah.
To the outside.
And so with grandmasters, you have all the architects, the engineers, the executives, and directors. These are the guys, girls, whatever. That's the least important part of it. They're like, so for lack of but I don't have a really good way of phrasing it yet, but it's another progression through the domains of progress, and with yet another third outcome after the fact that is cosmologically shifting you in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
All that is said, these are the members that make up the entire governance section of it, and they have specific requirements in terms of, well, really they don't have any more requirements
basically
past
coherence.
immunity. Yeah, but
There's almost nothing specific to it.
mhm. But once we start moving to the other side, to the right, we actually start seeing specific applications of the natural guilds.
Which you would expect because this is moving towards chaos.
Right. So, what we're having here is a bunch of... So there's a discussion to be had about the natural guilds and everything that has to do with that. But that is essentially the subject of the field manual and guidance and what we've been doing with Portal Mountain itself for quite a while. So that is that subject. And these requirements basically are saying that in order to be able to take this title of president, for example, you gotta understand you gotta be a member essentially of the Natural Guild. You gotta be a member of the Economy Guild. You gotta be a member of the Industry Guild, the Diplomacy Guild, and the Trade Guild.
Right, and you're talking when you say to be considered the president or whatever, this is really that outward projection through the membrane towards the towards the state.
Yeah.
Because internally, we would say in order to be presidenting, it's not
Yeah.
you don't take on a title and have the badge.
Yeah,
and walk around. So I'm the president.
Yeah, I would call
You are
these...
capable of presidenting.
I would call these roles transient.
Transient.
Yeah. So it's they're it's the president in the moment, the director in the moment. On the legalese side, you will probably have to have people with these titles representing, right? But
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word, these would be shells, like they're empty shells of credentials, keys to a lock.
Right. And-
pattern to ignite the to unlock a combination lock.
Right, and this all comes in through the state and what's recognized by the
Yeah.
state as far as property ownership and all this.
And quite
stuff.
frankly, the reason the state is only going to get an empty shell is its own fault for insisting on being so fiat. Just I don't have any
Normal interface.
I don't have any reservations about treating a dead thing as a dead thing.
Although in some cases, I think it's to be expected because you always have a membrane towards participation, participants, guests, and those coherences always exist. So you're always going to have this fiat state facade.
Yeah, but
No matter what.
But I think the reservation I have here is because the state enforces an empty shell kind of a facade, whereas a lot of the different
Right.
the
The state-
possibilities you can still be alive inside.
The state as it is reifies that empty shell.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we will have to present one. However,
But I'm
We
saying
don't
it's
have-
not unfortunate, it's
No.
expected.
no, it's unfortunate in the sense that it has to be a dead. We have to create a dead facade. The fortunate part is that it doesn't have to be deceptive in any way. The fortunate part is that it doesn't have to be, despite the fact that we're playing a game with unreality, we're not making it as unreal as that
Yes.
is the game.
Because within the membrane, we have the guild.
And more to that, we've given meaning to this unreality. We've given an actual role
Yeah.
for it to exist that it didn't even give itself.
Right.
So there you go. So we were trying to make something that's and
Yeah,
trying
so
to make
we're
it
interfacing
better.
with existing systems in order that something better can emerge out of it.
All right, so the president is kind of like an oddball here in that he is not any kind of particular grandmaster or temperament. As you can see, the director, architect, and engineer, and an executive are all temperaments based. Researcher, builder, operator, and navigator are also temperament based. The president is not. Right? So these guys are called what they're called because they have a dominant temperament. So you get to be a researcher
Right.
by a dominant temperament. You don't get to be a researcher in a department of research until you have these criteria. Right, so these are the guilds that you have to go through in order to fulfill that position. So you got 5 on the top. And
So this is kind of like the education stack, or what?
yeah.
Yeah.
This is exactly what it's. This is how we're combining guild dynamics with corporate dynamics. This is where they come into play.
Right. So we're giving each role saying that you have to take care of certain.
You have to be versed in these guilds.
Natural guilds.
Yeah.
These
And-
are all natural guilds.
And this way, they're all natural guilds.
Yeah.
And this way, the natural guilds function as mediation the way they were always supposed to in the beginning. We never knew exactly what that would look like. I think back when we talked about this originally, the years and years and years ago, the only thing we really said was that they are constraining each other. So not a single one of these guilds is capable of doing anything without all the other guilds saying, okay, are you taking care of this, that, and the other thing?
Yeah, the whole on.
And so this is to take that theoretical structure of constraint and give it an actual form, concrete form, in which this structure can actually play out and constrain. So all of these guilds that we're seeing are going to act as constraints for the activities of the guild institution, which is going to act as a constraint on all the different corporations. The corporations are the counterparts to constraint. They are the fabricators of protocols, right? They are creating. They're creative. They're the creative force. So this force is constraining. The corporate force is the expanding. Together, they're pushing against each other, and
Right.
the core
Yeah.
balance that they strike.
Isn't that a neat neat way to explain the profit motive and the cancer of profit motive cancer, basically.
Well, the profit motive cancer happens because this constraint is not.
The constraint is get money.
Is dysfunctional.
The
Yeah.
constraint is acquire money. It's been
And which means
simplified.
every other structure pays the price.
Yeah.
It,
Mhm.
literally and figuratively. They don't exist in any other fashion.
I guess we'll hit a short break here. Back in a few.
wanted to build it this way.
Back online. Welcome backs. Welcome backs.
Hello, 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 hello.
So, let's get back to our spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. So do we need to finish this up here?
Well,
we got our
I don't
bunch
know.
of-
I don't know if I need more elaboration. I mean, it's the same thing for everybody. The top has more requirements than the bottom.
So we've got this corporate structure described over here, and then
that's more of a institutional structure. So this is the
Right.
institute.
yeah. We'll have this exact same thing going on with corporate or whatever
Similar, yeah.
image, right? And then the idea over here is you have them all laid out, and under each one you have a set of
Requirements.
natural guilds which have to be educated towards
Right.
to understand,
Mhm.
to be members of those guild, or at least participants in the guild.
No members.
Members.
This is a membership requirement.
Yeah, there you go.
Uh,
But starting off, everybody starts off, participant.
Participation has a role here. It's not explicitly discussed. Participation is essentially the employee of anybody who is not a member.
Well, it's the experience of anybody
But-
who's looking at this presentation right now and not understanding it.
Yeah, yeah. So participation is there is room for participation. It's just not a very it's not the participation is more massaged into the system rather than again. This is not a democracy. It's not yeah.
Mm-hmm. But the fact that we are interested in and concerned about degrees of coherence, including that not yet of membership of participants, this is the whole viable system structure. You have a structure that can replicate itself. Therefore, you have to consider
Yeah, participation
works.
simply implies cooperation without necessarily sharing of the model itself. So it's not. Yeah, I don't know how to elaborate on that. Basically,
So how can we relate this to get into the corporate person and the state person?
so
this is a state person.
So no,
assuming
no,
side
this
of, or is that completely unrelated?
unrelated. This is just the state being itself. We will then need to go to actually scroll down. So there's the state person. This part of the diagram probably doesn't belong here, but I recorded it anyway.
Right.
There's another corporate person diagram, which is a counterpart to this, and when you look at them side by side, their relationship becomes very much illuminated.
Okay, so but how do we link that to this then? What's the relationship?
So the question I asked when creating this was basically, I will take the person archetype stack and try to understand how the Guild Institute is a person.
Right. Okay, no, but I think where we wanted to go with that, right, was agile economics, and this relationship between the initiatives
Yeah.
and the
Fulfillment.
right? So
Yeah.
does that fit into this at all, or we're kind of this is a complete different tangent? Like I'm
It's-
wondering how, because I know we want to talk about that, but how do we link?
They're related to the project management part and the economic part of the system. So initiatives and fulfillment are the counterparts of project management.
And where is economic in the stack?
Economy is a guild.
Right.
So
Damn,
it's a
so
natu-
that's cross domains, like
Oh
completely.
yeah. Like this elaboration is actually what determined what the content of the economy guild is, right? So they're definitely interdependent here. Literally, this entire elaboration is what you would be studying at that point within economy, which means a president would know this stuff like the back of their hands.
Right. This is the model of the space, or whatever. All your objects, interactions.
Yeah. Did we get a message?
never mind, it's personal. I will have to get back to that later.
Cool.
Actually, you might want to know we're streaming.
Oh yeah. Want to invite some peeps?
This is honors. So yeah. So the entire economic discussion is about to come up. Hope if we have time. Oh God.
Right. So you're having a bunch of corporations or
Yeah.
entities interacting together, and why are they doing that? What is it actually that's binding these different purposes of organization together?
Right.
And they're interbinding, right? And this is kind of like the vast structure that we're trying to hop up to that.
Okay, so that means that we'll get into the corporate person and the state person at the end of that. Okay, because that's going to show the overarching relationship between the two after we've gone through some
Mhm.
details, and that's going to kind of sum it all up together. So
Right.
so instead, what we're going to do is we're going to start with demand and supply. Notice the
Right.
change.
So we're moving on now from this is kind of like what the corporate structure internally kind of looks like and how it's educating itself and all its requirements and constraints. And now what is binding those to other corporations?
Yeah, so this is why we let off with the corporation as to what we're dealing with. Now we've tackled the institute that's going to be dealing with it, and now we're going to go back to the corporate level to see how it's going to be doing it in the context of many different corporations working together,
Mhm.
and where does this institution actually play its roles and how. So yeah, we're going to do that after I come right back.
Mhm. I think it's actually not a bad place to have that state person.
I think it's just relates to something else.
But of course, I found corporate person. We just want them side by side, right?
Yeah, we want them side by side so we can see their relationship to each other. I've already mentioned it to a number of people that they actually look like a husband and wife relationship, which is kind of funny and somewhat expected.
Indeed. That's good news.
Yeah. State being the wife, of course. I mean, we all know that, right?
Oh, view only, that's why. I see.
Yeah, you don't get no
I
editing.
can take this one.
You don't get no editing permissions. Yeah, these are probably going to go into a separate chart to denote
Right.
other
And
ideas.
this is later on we're going to
Yeah,
get into this.
so they're kind of complementary persons. So speaking of persons, this is actually a very important archetype stack that we've never delved into before, but it turns out that but it turns out to be the binder of all of this work. A lot of it has to do with the fact that it's actually interfacing through it. So what do I mean? So back to the idea of the primordial archetypes, if we recall, they are the representation of pure potentiality, and it's a gradient from chaos to order,
Mm-hmm.
and they're essentially the archetypical reality of just all experiences, if you want to go that route. Basic point there is that there's a reflection of these kinds of archetypes found in what's called the person. And the person is, again, another abstraction. It's a unit of identity, basically. It's a state of identity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We didn't want to get into that quite yet, though, right? If we want to get into the...
Right. This is we need to discuss person before we can discuss state person and corporate person and all of that stuff.
Right.
So person is the lowest common denominator of the entity that this is all about, that we would be calling a member or a grandmaster or any of those
Mhm.
things. That's the person. It's not this specific person. It's not, well, it can be. That's like the instantiation of that,
Right.
but it's not what is meant by the archetype stack itself. The archetype stack itself stands for the idea of the person and how we should look at it in terms of pure potentiality, basically. So, this is where we get all these fancy words of identity, purpose, and relation, role, skill, provision. We're basically trying to
Mhm.
answer the questions of what does the state, like, as I was saying, like, the state of a person is their identity. For the most part, they function in the world through their name, through their reputation, through their all of these heuristics that make up the identity. And their entire functionality is defined in terms of purpose. That's why the corporate archetype for them is purpose. That's their outward functional.
So,
Mm.
and we're getting into the thing that I wanted to do, but that we don't have time for, which is
Yeah.
to go through each and every box.
Yeah. So
And say, how did this derive? Where did it come from?
So I'm just giving like a rough idea of
So
that process.
what we want to do is get to the economy. What is between intercorporation economy? How is that deriving?
Yeah. So now that we have a somewhat of a primitive understanding of this column existence and in relationship to other columns, we can see that it is answered in a very specific. It is used as a binder. I need the.
Sorry.
I need the demand and supply. Spreadsheet.
I was looking for that earlier.
Spreadsheet.
Is it? I assume
It's here.
here. Okay,
There's a link here somewhere.
that's not it.
Just put there it is. Alrighty. And so we start off with the notion that demand is actually the demand of the person archetype. We're asking, how do we get an identity? How do we get a purpose? How do we get a relation? How do we get a role? How do we get a skill, a provision, and all of these things, right? Like, how does the institution provide for these? Because we need to answer a very realistic question as to why the hell do we need this institution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is to answer that question.
So what do we got here?
So we're now looking at the person archetypes in terms of demand, right? And then we want to answer the question of in terms of the institute of what supplies it.
Okay.
So the first
We've
thing.
finally roped in that personal internal needs, what a person sees within their own model of their self and their needs in their world, we're roping and connecting that into the greater social structure. In other words, we're giving a voice to the inner experience of need. That's
Right.
what I'm seeing here right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. This is the member saying, Guild Institute, I need this. This is the request for an initiative to take place. Guild Institute, please, I need to eat, I'm hungry. I need a bed, I'm sleepy. This is that.
I'm not talking about like actually a nanny state or anything like
Okay,
that.
so
I'm just
you've
giving
zeroed in
simple-
on provision here and guild institution.
Yeah,
Or-
you basically rely on all provisions. The guild institution is the facilitator of provision itself. So
right.
You,
and this is where we're getting into order. For one, we're on the order side of chaos and order now, and we're seeing operations of the actual concrete operations, as opposed to up here, which is the pie in the sky,
yeah.
past the horizon type of management.
Right. So, the pie in the sky kind of stuff. Identity is supplied by the very person that is asking that question. The purpose is supplied by the various corporations. That means the kinds of things you can do, are to fulfill initiatives. All of these things are like, oh, there's this task to do, there's that task to do, there's this task to do. You can find a purpose in terms of action. And that's what the corporation facilitates in this scheme.
Yeah,
leaving alone the
this
corporations
is
of
new to me. This
Oh, yeah.
stack. I haven't
yeah, this
seen
is
that
new.
related.
This is like a few days old now. Only.
It makes sense so far.
Yeah.
So
So
you'd have one side and the other, demand and supply.
yeah. So relationships are supplied by other members essentially. This is where you get into like the actual management, where your role, for instance, in this corporation, your role is this, in that corporation, your role is that. That's supplied by the different executives that are in charge of the various departments of the corporation. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same pattern everywhere. A skill is supplied by the position that you're in, right? Provision by the full institution. Performance is supplied by the researcher. The researcher is the person who watches and studies, and he's connecting the dots, and you can evaluate yourself based on that.
Yeah, and that's a very generic thing, just keeping track of stuff.
Yeah. Navigators.
And the lower we get, the more generic we find that the various skills that are happening. These generic skills are applied to every other thing up top. Where a lot
One of the
different-
things you'll probably have already noticed is that we're not aiming towards a very specialized oriented environment. We're not looking for specialists in the most direct sense, the way you would have it in the current corporate framework.
You'll see it. We'll be able to.
There are
quantify it.
specializations, but it's not geared towards
Yeah.
excluding everything else.
The only specialization you're seeing in our work here is our actual concrete unfolding, bootstrapping of this corporation we're talking about and different products.
Yeah, actually, this is the only specialization to have in this information itself. Outside of that, it's more of a well, and alluding back to the crisscrossing nature of the corporate departments versus the state departments. You really can't be too specialized because you're always forced into these two different worlds at the same time. The little proverb that you can't serve two masters.
Sure.
And this
Right,
is the actual case where not only are you serving two masters, you have to serve two masters. But the good news is that they're non-dual.
Right. It's not a good and evil type thing.
Exactly.
Masters.
Like so two is one in this case. Like this is it's not a math deal. So this is the supply and the demand and supply. Sorry, going to.
Don't make that mistake ever again, or I'll whip you.
I know. My goal, my stated goal is to make people really detest the phrase supply and demand. It's
Right.
more of a personal thing, but
And we were
I
talking
think you'll
about this.
understand why, especially if you look into if you look into the implications of thinking that way and how ass backwards it is. Anyway, that's my own personal quirk. And we, as guild members, if you will,
are going to correctly correlate demand and supply in terms of the guild institution and the corporate.
Maybe this is kind of a key point, because, and what we were talking about before is, you're asking the question, like, is it supply and demand, or is it really demand and supply? So are you having supplies, like let's say you are, you're sitting on certain resources, you can commodify them, you have a bunch of ability through networking to do stuff, and you're like, okay, I can do this. How can I advertise to people so that they want what I have? And then you create a business out of that, right?
Right. So
And
basically,
a totally other way is like, okay, demand and then supply. So you're thinking, what do people actually need? Whether it's your specialty that you've happened to land into, or this is what your family always does, and this is what your property is set up to do. You know, rather than that, you have to ask the question and start with, okay, what do people actually need? And this model illuminates that need is coming from within yourself. You will see and know the needs when you ask that question, and you can extend that out towards others and towards the economy, and be like, try to satisfy.
and
that.
this is also to bring back home as to why it's not going to be a democracy, but at the same time why it doesn't need to be a democracy, because
and you can't make a statement either. It is going to become a democracy. It is not going to. That's
no
kind
no
of
no I'm
reifying
saying
the whole idea.
what I'm saying is basically why those things start to not really apply or become a question is as a part of the heuristics of how this works. Why you don't want necessarily to have a popularity contest over certain things.
In certain
right?
ways, we're not talking about necessarily the overall structure or whatever.
No. Cutting again, refocusing on only what this is doing. It doesn't need further selection, further choice in terms of is it this way, is it that way?
Yeah, like a point to that is the guild, as I imagine and that we've discussed, doesn't need to supplant anything. It doesn't need to push anything out of the way. It sits on top of whatever's existing as it is.
Yeah.
It has no problem with it, and it makes it more efficient. And that's why there's so many value propositions here.
Efficiency from a specific context, not an efficiency in terms of get rid of artifacts
of
that
the motive of the corporation, which may happen to be profit,
yeah.
right? But you talk about multiplier effects and stuff like that. When your company is sliced into so many pieces, not sliced, but the people themselves in their mind know, I can go to this guild to that guild to learn horizontally and to improve efficiency. These are things that you can't even imagine how it would improve your bottom line.
Okay.
Right?
I'm just going to plow through the next concept because we have to make it actually
Right, for time, yeah.
seem more and to make the whole thing seem worthwhile. So we have the supply column, which picks out certain for terminology from the institution, and then the facilities column just supplies which kind of institution or entity is going to actually be responsible for having that happen. So campus and academy are your non-profit corporations.
Interesting. That's another dimension.
Yeah, and they're more like the civil things, whereas corporation as a whole takes care of everything else in terms of function. So every action, in terms of, look, I'll make the statement again, the institution is itself impotent. It cannot function. It doesn't. What it does is it says, okay, corporation X, please do Y.
And what do you mean by institute? Are you saying where the demand is coming from?
Yeah. So this side, the governance side, is what's busy creating.
Somebody message.
Yeah.
Who did that?
It's busy creating.
Chattings. Yep. Go ahead.
Creating these initiatives, right? So the institution is busy creating these initiatives. It's busy taking the requests of its members, massaging them into an initiative and putting them into what's called a backlog of tasks. This is getting into our agile economy conversation that I want to plow through.
Yep.
Corporations then look at this stack of tasks, of initiatives, and then not bid really, but in fact, I would say the institution is sort of a part of that.
The institution is shopping around who they want.
They're saying there's more to it. They're saying, okay, these are the tasks, but a part of that conversation involves the corporations, and they'll be like, okay, you do this task. The corporation can, like, corporation wide, please do this task. Corporation wide be like, actually I can't. There's this, and this in my timetable, so it wouldn't be possible to achieve it. So maybe in conjunction with corporation C and D.
See, you have to start getting into web of trust and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And being able
But this is-
to have reputation.
But this
because
is
what
where
are you
it's just-
getting? What are you getting for doing this little task?
But this is where it comes. This comes from the factor of everybody being a member of the same institution already.
Okay, so intra,
Yeah. So this is
intra, right?
Yeah. So this is all
Institution.
intra-corporation,
Yeah.
and there's already the buy-in. There's already the framework behind
Yeah.
it. So we're assuming all of that, of course.
Yeah. So this structure, like from a corporate structure standpoint, it would make sense that even a traditional corporation would want to study this
Oh, yeah.
type of a structure
Oh, yeah.
and see, am I compliant in this?
Yeah.
field,
This
in
is this
part,
is
in
this
part?
is where we have our corporate value framework idea coming from, which we'll tackle soon.
Right. Just
Right.
one thing I wanted to note: campus and academy seem like public things.
Yep. They are.
So civic on the civic side, whereas the academy is slightly more
More
upper.
Yeah.
You could say
Upper tier.
Yeah, like people who actually want to get involved in politics, quote unquote.
Yeah,
That-
but
that
this
type
this
of
gets
a-
back into our discussion about member versus
Analogy.
master and their tasks. The master isn't the one bringing initiatives to the table to begin with, so it's not that kind of position. So it's very
Right.
important to understand who holds who by the balls. In this case, and it's not what you'd expect. Yeah, so
the economy,
the economy is basically based on this
demand and supply.
demand and supply. The demand part is what I've been discussing as initiatives. You are creating these initiatives through the upbringing of member issues to an isomorphic state. Then you put them into a backlog, and the backlog is
Right.
then
This doesn't exist. Nothing like this exists right now, which is pathetic for anybody who thinks we have, who wants to have a social
the only
government.
place this exists is in software development projects.
Yeah, so
This is literally
which
the
is where
place-
you'd expect it. So, but
Yeah.
that's okay because it's very structured, organized.
So yeah, like the next phase would be for distributing the task list towards corporation and the to-do list and all of that stuff. This all happens through iterations. Iterations have specific timelines, and they are always getting feedback.
So you're talking about agile
Very agile.
cycles.
Yeah.
So like a week cycle. You want to see the product every week.
Weeks, 2 weeks. It depends on the product. It depends on the corporation. It depends
Yep.
on everything else. Long story short, again, I'm plowing through this. We'll cover this in more detail. So you would have these assignments of corporations to these initiatives. Now then the exact same thing will then happen with each picked up in a project in the corporation.
You could have multiple corporations assigned to one initiative.
Yes, this is what I'm saying, that an initiative is broken up into tasks, and these tasks are then negotiated between corporations. And then, on top of that, within the corporation, a task can be broken out into its own,
Right.
into its own
Yeah.
tasks for fulfillment, which actually can come back to the institution to say, okay, I need this, 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 I need
Right.
this, I need this, I need
Yeah,
this.
so it comes back as new initiatives.
Yeah, and so so this feedback loops back through the institution, which facilitates either the resources or the new initiatives or whatever, or takes another corporation and supplants the resources that it needs. You name it.
Mm-hmm.
It has that's what it's for. And so this is the cycle that this all goes through.
Mm-hmm.
The backlog is where everything converges on. Membership is essentially this maintenance of this backlog and making sure that it has everything to do with supply and the demand,
Mm-hmm.
which is originally articulated in
Demand and supply.
in demand and supply to begin with, in its most basic form, and its more strict forms, or more concrete terms,
Right.
is where rubber meets the road, and we can't really speak to that because it could be anything.
So this is kind of like going way up the stack towards Grand Mastery, is to be looking down at this company that's doing initiatives and fulfilling tasks and be like, is this actually necessary? Is it isomorphic? What
Yeah.
else? What do we need that's missing from this? Because I'm seeing something happening, but boom, this needs too. So
Right, exactly.
new
And this is where you
initiative.
get back into the corporate. Can you get back into the institutional one? Yeah. So this is where you get the governance. So governance maintains the coherence of the ministry. The sovereign contextualizes the cabinet. So that's their jobs. This is where masters and grandmasters really have to really pull their weight. So basically, what does it mean to maintain the coherence of the ministry? That means the satisfaction of constraint supply by the mediation guild. What does that mean? It means satisfying every single natural guild and their constraints. And then what does a sovereign contextualize the cabinet means? Contextualization means relating the initiatives to the affected members themselves. So who made these requests and why, and making sure that these are really also interrelated with the institution as a whole.
That's contextualization.
Yeah, so it's basically bridging every potential scale there is. So grandmasters are really only responsible for making sure that the scales are isomorphic, whereas the masters are responsible that the intercommunication between members is isomorphic. And together they're just basically conducting the whole thing, but they're not content facilitators in that sense. All of this is to remove any power
Mhm.
plays and all of that stuff. So
Right.
yeah, again, this is a very much everybody's got everybody by the balls kind of thing.
Right.
That's the way I like to look at it. Push and pull, constrain, and it's an egalitarian system for sure. However, yes, but, right? So I'll be back quickly.
Yeah, we'll take a short break. And
Alright.
we are back.
All right, so one more point to blow through, like as quickly as possible,
Sunlight's
while I still don't have
going
time. Let's see.
Where were we?
We were doing the demand and supply, and that was bridged by
Mhm.
the personal archetype stack. And yeah, so the last part to that relationship is how the hell do we get an employee working for a corporation, right? So you get all these tasks picked up by corporations. What does the corporation do in order to fulfill the initiatives that it's participating in? So this is again where we go back to the institution, and we notice one thing is that as soon as you go to the institution, please.
Where is that? I'm trying
This,
to
this
find
is
it.
it. This is it.
Yeah, that's what I
You're
thought.
right.
And
Up.
then,
We need the rolls. No. Move that away.
oh, on this side. Okay.
Move that away.
Here we go. This one.
This, we need that. All right, so mediation requirements. So this is a kind of key to how I see this working. We have the guild, the education guild, which moves people through the field manual, right? With all the different
Mhm.
natural concerns, which are encompassed by all the natural guilds.
Yep.
And so which is where we get these fancy titles of director and architect and engineer by having gone through a specific
Right.
natural guild, right? So when you have these quote unquote credentials, you can be considered those roles, right? And
Right.
so
And
this
that's how entropy slips in. Right here is when becomes reified, this whole structure, without doing the proper feedback to say, are they actually a member?
right. But
Very
the point.
tricky. Side point. Go ahead.
The point I'm going for is that this ends up filling up the different departments of the institution, right, with members. So as people in their education move through these natural concerns
Right.
and natural guilds, they acquire these titles of researcher, builder, and operator, and navigator, and whatever. Go back to the corporate structure.
Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure which one that would be. Not this one.
This one. Scroll down.
Scroll up. You
Yeah,
mean.
scroll up. So, and it just happens to be the exact roster of human resources that every corporation is actually made out of,
Mhm.
right? So
It's
this,
an unpacking of this.
yeah, exactly. And so what the vision is basically, okay, the corporation has this human resources template that they need to fill up, and lo and behold, there's a whole bunch of institutional departments that supply researchers, developers, operators, coordinators, and all of those kinds of
Mhm.
coordinator. Just think of this navigator. Yeah, we changed it. Okay, well, good thing. Good. We changed the navigator to coordinator. I need to make sure I capture that somewhere
Right.
else. But yeah, basically,
Mm-hmm.
that's what's happening here. We are filling out our human resources with those people. And since it's the same departments that the institution has given us, we're basically saying, hey, institution, I need operators, I need developers, I need researchers and all of that stuff, and the people that are within that department in the institution can be like, oh, I have this available for me, I have this available for me, I have that available for me. Now, to bring that whole thing home is that what the vision is that work is voluntary. The members of the institution are free to pick on which corporate task they want to fulfill. Now, sure, the corporation is, being its own entity, is free to
Mhm.
say you, not you, you, not you.
So this is
and-
another negotiation
Yeah.
manifold.
Yeah, and so, but all the employment is mediated through the institution again,
right? So like you don't have a question as to where they're coming from or whatnot, and because they're coming through the institution, it's kind of like, it's almost like a job recruitment center, right? It vets the applicants for you.
Mm-hmm.
So it has that cushiony, thing that corporation need to manage themselves. Of like, am I getting a good employee, and am I not getting a good employee?
Yeah, and this is a
But you get
dimension.
but everybody is voluntary. Like you're not looking for work because you need to eat. No, you eat when you say to the institute, I need food, and it sends a corporation to put a meal in front of you.
This is a dimension of human resources that is not captured basically
No.
within your job role or your skill role. This is a stepping back and seeing a lot of different things as researchers.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many specifics,
Right.
But so it's a stepping back meta.
So again,
kind
this is a kind of like a middle finger to the whole specialization patterning that we see in modern corporate structures. It flies right in the face of
Right.
that, in that it doesn't assume that
Bullshit.
just because you're specialized in one way, you cannot possibly be have a good idea to say on a different discipline.
Right.
Patterns are patterns,
and they call
we
these
acknowledge that.
Soft skills. Basically,
Yeah.
this would be the most archetypal soft skills
Mm-hmm.
that you could have.
And all of this sort of ties in the whole of the relationship between corporations and the institution. Now, I gotta make one side note here, is that when I say the institution, curiously, you don't actually have to be limited to one. Their constitution, their internal constitution, allows for them to easily interoperate with other institutions.
How do you define them? Is this like a guild? Is this a shared commitment?
Sorry?
How do you define the institution?
The institution would be a
How do you-
non-profit corporation
group
in the
together?
legal sense.
So institution puts up forward initiatives. Is that the
Yeah.
structure? So
Yeah, and when there's two institutions, what they have to basically be doing is they have to be looking at each other's initiatives.
So
and
an institution
merging.
at its base is just a person, though, because you can say I can make
Yeah,
initiatives.
yeah.
Right.
So it goes all the way from a hyperstitional entity, so an imagined one made real, into an actual physical legal something.
A way to do that to socially try to have shared sources of initiatives, like a shared idea
Yeah.
of why you would have this initiative,
Mhm.
and then another person takes on that institute,
And
and,
the-
they
and the-
make those initiatives in their
And everything
space.
everything gets back to the person archetype stack, where everything gets bound together into one single set of initiatives, right? Because if you're both following the same stack, then all you're really doing is having two variations on
Right.
the same theme.
Doesn't this get into the meta schedule?
Yeah, it does. I don't think we can plow through that though.
Okay.
The meta schedule comes from the fact that these tasks are being picked up from this pool of backlog tasks, and if I'm a person that can do this and you're a person that can do that, well, we don't need to we don't need to wait for each
Right.
other. We can do a task in parallel, kind of thing.
And you also give personal weighting to the various corporations that you're a member of,
Mm-hmm.
and what
Yeah.
tasks are, how
The voluntary-
important they are to those corporations, and as a whole,
The
like
voluntary nature of it also means that you're not stuck to a single. You're not working for one single corporation. You're working for.
Right.
You're working on tasks for them. And the second thing is
Right.
there is that whole non-compete shit that's completely
big.
eliminated
that is big.
from all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And fuck, man, what a waste of time.
Yep.
Let's not do this because rules. Yeah, but people are gonna die.
Well,
But
it's,
rules.
Simplistic.
Sorry, I'm not very happy about this current state of affairs with people. That's why I did this.
Mhm. It's known. It is typical.
So yeah, all of these things should not technically exist under this
But
structure.
again, back to participation and guest coherence. You're always going to have this. You're always going to have people who have just been born literally today.
Yeah.
They're just born, right?
Yeah, no, that's why we're not touching the participant in the schema at the moment, because we are not looking at their contributions as part of the replicative mechanism.
Right, and that's
It's-
where a lot of power is too. That faith, sort of. It's the commitment, the leap of faith to become accountable towards certain objectives,
Mhm.
towards
Yeah.
this goal of to become a member of the guild.
I think the participation is just another discussion.
Totally,
It has
yeah.
it has its own implications.
So where do we want to go with this further then? So we've got human resources.
The
we're-
next phase
we're
will
talking about the
be
economy, right? How can we wrap up the economic
so
connections of corporations between each other, and for what reasons? So we've
I
done
guess-
a lot of that. So
I guess
initiatives.
put the two archetypes stacks together and look at them as complementary. So person
Initiatives and
the corporate.
yeah, I did
Alright.
that wherever that was.
Yeah, scroll up. Scroll up and then scroll down. Right. So this is where we get into a more top-down image, high-level image of the complementarity between state and institution. Corporation and state.
Mm-hmm.
And we can just basically see that relationship and their identities and their roles and their and the entire articulation of that stack. So supply facilitator, demand facilitator, transformation of activity into provision, transformation of provision into activity. Right? Like it's a complementary
Seeing some
function.
connections there.
Natural hierarchy sustainer, natural hierarchy maintainer. They're tackling two different layers of the natural concerns.
Right.
One with injecting things into it, one with arranging the things injected into it. Encompasses guild activities, encompasses guild provision. So potential versus actualization. What are you doing?
Sorry. Yeah.
How dare you?
I just wanted to look at.
No, you don't want to do that.
I wanted to. Okay, because they line up with these, right?
Yeah, these are all personal. These are all like, okay. See how the personal archetypes stack has identity at the top? So the
Yep.
identity of the corporate person
Right. So yeah,
is supply facilitator.
we've taken this as the person as the archetype, and then shown what is that when it's in this context, and what is that when it's in this context.
Right.
The corporate and the state.
And when we do that,
You get these two persons.
yeah, and when we do that, we can see that these two persons are actually in a complementary relationship with each other. They are like that's why I refer to it as a husband and wife. It looks like a marriage from a relational point of view.
And we're seeing the marriage of chaos and order.
Essentially, yes.
And that's the chart here.
Yeah.
The absurd, as we call it.
Which led me to have my comment of the state having to be the wife, because if you look at the kind of identifications that it has, they're more chaotic in nature. They don't have set rules and set regulations about them. Not as much.
And it's beyond a horizon too.
Yeah,
Interesting,
in
yeah.
the sense that you cannot change it. In the sense that you this is what you have to deal with, I suppose. Yeah, so if you keep going down, it encompasses guild activities, practical application facilitator, theoretical study facilitator. Again, you got the abstract and concrete dichotomy going on, logical planner, tactical planner. Again, tactics are far more chaotic than logistical. Logistic is a certain narrow path through once the tactical information is in place. Feedback evaluator, feedback producer. Both are project managers. One
So project, this is where initiatives and fulfillments
Yeah.
differentiate. One manages projects in terms of initiatives, the other in terms of fulfillments.
Right, and that's really the main connection here in terms of economy between corporate.
Yeah. Yeah. So distributor and collector. Collector is a conventional archetype we have for the for absurdity, really. It's a subject unto itself, but it has to do with grandmastery, collection, and I forgot the details for that. We'll have to tackle that in a different way. So realtor and host. So basically, a household, the person in the house versus the person facilitating houses to begin with. Fitness
Right.
provider, beneficiary of that. Vocational trainer, so on the job kind of training, and educational trainer in the sense of like your inner knowledge.
Now
So-
that when you say educational at the bottom, it evokes the natural guild stack. Is there
That's
any
exactly what we're
relation
talking
there?
about. Yep. That is the trainer in the guild
Okay,
stack.
because this isn't the natural guild stack.
No,
We could pull it up, but it's not that,
no, but it does tie.
right?
Like we never had these connections before. Is really all that's saying is that these diagrams are new because we never delved this deeply into this.
No,
subject.
but like when you say educational, like you can't say natural guild stack entirely. Like
no,
because
it just provides the academy.
this just completely matched up, like practically this whole thing, right?
Mhm.
To this.
Well,
but
it
then
is.
you slipped instead of going into risk and entropy, whatever. it
No.
is.
This is how it handles how does the corporate person handle uncertainty? How
Okay.
does the state person handle uncertainty?
Uncertainty of knowledge and
Yeah,
model.
this one injects knowledge.
Right.
This one
Yeah.
injects training.
Okay. So scratch that natural guild thing. Aside from incidentally the connection.
Yeah, the connection is how it does it, not that
Yeah.
it maps to any of this.
And yep, that may make perfect sense
in
to
the natural
connect it
okay
here.
in the natural guilds you have
Mhm.
education as the
Like
bottom.
that is the first constraint,
right?
So you'd expect it.
So this is more of a coincidence, but you know what? It's a great coincidence because they are both
there may
essential.
be something there. See,
They're starting right from the beginning. They're both starting from the same spot. Yeah.
could be something to it.
Really? You think so?
There might be. Might be.
My God, I thought we were taking over the world.
Not yet.
Damn it. Okay, I think this is as far as I can take it at this point. Once we have this complementary relationship, this is sort of...
Is that everything we wanted to get into? Okay.
yeah,
then
this
how about,
binds everything together,
um,
and then we can move from that as a platform all to itself.
because
to the
so
next subject.
we wanted to know what the structure, not only the corporate structure, but the intercorporate structure. So, and getting into the sort of the states, quote unquote.
Mhm. So this should give you enough of a template as to what that would look like.
So I can understand we needed that in order to, what are you applying the dashboard to?
Mhm.
So assuming that everybody in every one of these roles is augmenting their mental dashboard with physical dashboards, such as the products that we've been talking about,
That's exactly it.
then what exactly does that dashboard look like? How does it function? And also, using this as the model schema, as we call it,
Yep.
how do we pull up the vision of this whole superstructure into the deck protocol, or whatever you want to call it, into the dashboard as like you would load up a module for taking care of this, right? And then you have corporate organization, state organization,
Oh.
right?
Mhm. Sorry, your phone was doing something weird.
Oh yeah. Right. It makes me think like how much of this will make it into a default package.
So this okay.
Like
I'll wrap
this
this-
isn't even custom. This comes with the software. This
Yeah.
corporate structure and all
So the first point, whole corporate value framework. And this is our
Right. We
this is-
didn't get into that.
This is our primordial. Yeah, all of this is
And
going.
can you describe the corporate value structure, how that works?
Um,
Like, I know this is an archetype.
No, corporate
of-
value framework, and corporate value framework is basically
Cool.
an idea of setting up a consultancy product that essentially sells this as a framework for building the corporate values in terms of the company. Because in my experience, first of all, backtrack, the best companies I've worked for actually tried to do this. They tried to unify their sort of mental landscape into to a unified vision as like it works
Right.
it works on the superficial level. It's a great dopamine hit when
And
things
you,
jive.
You expect this to be part of culture too, that we would have little crutches.
Yeah. The problem with it that I've seen is that because it's a corporate setting and because it's not personal and you're basically there.
Yeah, the loop is broken. The
Is a
strange
cog
loop
in
is
a,
broken.
is a cog in a machine. As soon as that relationship is over, those values actually end up going out the window. They don't matter.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm too surprised by the experience itself, but it fucking hurts. Okay, it sucks. More to address. This is more to like sort of address that. So these companies are actually going in the right direction for the wrong reasons. They're doing it as a matter of increasing their own productivity, which is the wrong, reason to go into this for. The reason you want to go into this for is
Right.
because you actually don't want that to be a superficial aspect of your life. You want that to be an actual.
Mm-hmm.
You want that to be something real.